York Times and others admit this is going on. This article, when you hear this, this is admitted, but they just basically whitewash it. Kind of like this LA Times article, 30,000 mostly black Libyans flee a single town. There are giant mass graves, and in some cases, giant dead piles of black people, black Libyans. The al-Qaeda forces that NATO's put in are publicly engaged in a massacre that will soon reach Rwandan proportions. We told you about this 6 months ago. It had begun. Now it's just pell-mell, kill any black you come across. And again, the liberals who'll have a heart attack if somebody doesn't hand over their bank account, they'll say, give us your bank account, give us government health care, give the foreign banks all your money or you're racist. And whites just slit their wrist and go, I'm guilty. Take everything I've got. Give it to Al Gore. Meanwhile, the UN all over the world is slaughtering, quote, minorities, which are the majority globally. And it's part of a racist eugenics program. And LA Times, it's just mass murder, total death. New York Times admits it. But don't worry, David Cameron has gone to the United Nations. David, and we're going to Paul here in a moment, into the next segment. He's gone to the United Nations and said, yes, let's invade more countries under humanitarian auspices. So they fund rebels, they rebel, the government fights back, the population fights back, NATO bombs the country for 5-6 months and invades and then slaughters any minority group and then calls it loving and liberal because a Peace Prize president's running it. After all, he's part black, so it must be good. Again, this is all political correctness, like a sick mental illness. Now, here's the latest news. They invade your country over environmental reasons. They invade your country over humanitarian reasons, having rebels try to overthrow it. Here's Paul Watson's headline, and it's all true. Armed troops burn down homes, kill children to evict Ugandans in name of global warming. And the mainstream news actually says, well, it's for the earth. Line up the families, shoot them, burn them, kill everybody. It's a program to come in and displace the people to, quote, plant trees as part of their carbon allotment. And Paul Watson joins us. We're going to break in a moment, Paul, but what's even more incredible than the UN-backed forces murdering people, Paul, is that the media is like, well, it's okay. This is loving. This is a sacrament of death, Paul.
Well, I mean, just look at the headline that the New York Times puts on top of this astounding story. In scramble for land, group says, company pushed Ugandans out. Just gently pushed them out. And then you actually read what the villagers reported was done. Burning down homes, killing children, beating people up, threatening to shoot them in the head if they resist. You know, just gently pushing them out. And of course, this is all being run under the order of the World Bank and other banks like HSBC, transnational corporations. It's called the New Forest Company, and it's basically working with the brutal Ugandan government. They've evicted more than 20,000 Africans and also people in South America from their land. Basically, little warning, no compensation, armed troops turn up, set everybody's houses on fire, beat and kill anyone who resists. There's a report of children being killed in this New York Times article.
But that's a gentle push. That's a nudge, Paul.
Just a gentle push,
And we wonder why we have 30 million illegal aliens here. This was done in the 80s and 90s all over southern and central Mexico. On record, they came and took land that people have been on for thousands of years under a UN program. They even had rebellions in Yucatan over it. We'll be right back to break this down. This is the loving, liberal genocide that you love so much. And they say it's for the earth. Oh, so loving. Oh. Think about how incredible this is, how off the charts. Cameron and the UN, the Prime Minister of England and the UN, are openly in the news yesterday saying we're going to have more humanitarian interventions like Libya, Ivory Coast, and others. They're talking about Syria. And it's on record the West is funding rebels in all these countries to try to overthrow them. They're going into Libya, and now it's been admitted for weeks, what we told you 6 months ago. They are murdering blacks on site who live in North Africa, who are part of the country. They are killing them. I saw a report where they shot toddlers and killed them yesterday in the Associated Press because their last names were Gaddafi. It's basically like Jones or Smith in Libya. Very common name. And they just killed him. I mean, this is they got him at the airport, caught him at the airport. They just lined him up and shot him. That was in the news yesterday, and it's like, oh, this is so humanitarian. And now I'm reading the New York Times and others, and they're like, well, yeah, this World Bank-run company, and they just say when they come into an area, oh, we're doing this to plant trees. It's for a forest. And basically, we've seen this over and over again with the UN, Agenda 21, UN biosphere zones. They go and enforce the indigenous populations out. This is incredible. Paul Watson, please continue with your report. Hold on, we're going to get you. You need to start over. I'm sorry, you weren't faded up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the New Forests Company, which is a British company. Its primary investor is the World Bank. It's run by the current HSBC managing director, and also on its board of directors are several investment bankers, including one who worked for Goldman Sachs. Basically, they make money out of seizing the land of poor villages in Africa primarily, planting trees and then selling the carbon offsets to transnational corporations who can then, quote, pollute. And, of course, the cost is merely passed on to us, the consumer. And then afterwards, they just chop down the trees and sell them for timber anyway. So you've got this group, which is basically run by the World Bank. It's a World Bank front working in alliance with the Ugandan government and the army. They show up at villages, threaten people to get out of their homes. If they don't, they kill them. They set the homes on fire. And then for example, in this one village, which is mentioned in the New York Times article, the school where the kids were taught, which of course is very important in Africa where education's so lacking, the school is now the headquarters for this British sustainability company. So they ransack entire villages and towns. Farmers have the whole plantations destroyed. There's one case in a Guardian article, which is about the same issue, where the guy talks about, you know, he was growing bananas, he was growing sugar canes, he was feeding his children. Now he's, you know, the poorest guy there. And the malaria, malnutrition, all exploding as a result of this. And it's neo-colonialism under the guise of protecting against global warming. This is killing the African dream of development and a reasonable standard of living through global warming hysteria, which is all run by transnational banks and corporations who invoke this climate change con to raise villages and steal land so they can take a slice of this multi-billion-dollar carbon trading Ponzi scheme.
And Paul, as the 1948 British Royal Commission admitted, it was adopted by the U.S. government as policy on record. We cover it in Endgame. They said, if we let the third world industrialize, they'll stop having as many kids, but we're going to block them from industrializing. They're going to have a bunch of kids, but then we'll just mitigate with birth control and land use and use food as a weapon, as Kissinger repeated in '73 in State Department Memorandum 200. And so this is so cold-blooded, just like the carbon taxes in Copenhagen we learned. We're right at double what they would be on the third world, what they would be on the West. This is a death sentence by a bunch of eugenicists, but as long as they say they're liberal, it's okay. And trendies all over Austin have carbon offset stickers on their cars and pay money to these very groups so they can run around mass murdering black people. They love it, too. I mean, you tell a liberal, they're like, good, murder them all. There's too many. I'm liberal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, progressives who hyperventilate about, you know, global warming impacting poor people the most and how we need to reduce our living standards, when global warming alarmism itself is not just reducing the living standards of the poor, it's starving them to death. I mean, look at biofuels. You've got countries like Swaziland and Haiti where they're living on mud pies. You know, food prices double because all these transnational corporations are seizing the land.
Stay there. We're going to Aaron. We're going to get him online now, but I want you to finish when we come back. This is part of a larger program, and I want to tie it in, as you were just doing, with the Copenhagen Treaty, with the biofuels, admittedly killing millions more every year via starvation. And you bring this up to a liberal trendy, they'll just go, I'm not a liberal trendy, okay? I mean, they're really Nazis, and they love it. It's so much fun for them. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Paul Watson is here with us. When you hear me start hyperventilating and getting angry and calling the globalists scum, I'm just being real. I am here basically attempting to get you to wake up and get out of your trance. I want to explain something. The eugenicists said in the 50s, Hitler embarrassed us. We're going to now say we're a green movement, and we're going to cut off the resources to the third world. We do not want them to develop, so we're going to let them overpopulate, even from their perspective. You can debate whether it's overpopulated or not. It's a cold-blooded, militarized attack, and now all over the world, I've been there, Mexico, you name it, they come in and force the people off their ancestral land who are living sustainably in nature, happily. They herd them into the cities. They give them the vaccines. Mexico City's got 35 million people. Something like 20% of the children are born with a syndrome where their brain is underdeveloped, and they don't ever even talk or move. They're just vegetables, and the parents just take care of these coma creatures. I mean, you can look that up. That's even in PBS documentaries. Total toxic waste. It's the same thing all over the place. And then they build the cheap widgets that we buy that break before you even get out of the box. Most things, if I actually buy it on the road at Walmart, if I have to, breaks within 5 minutes. I mean, I'm shocked when I buy something at a Target or a Walmart that actually works more than once. I bought a bottle opener the other day when I was out of town, made in China. It's all they had at the gas station, and it didn't work. It wouldn't open bottles. It wasn't even the right size. It's complete idiocy with suicide nets around the buildings where the iPads are made. Now, they're forcing them all off into the big cities where they then have to go on UN UNICEF assistance. Then you give money to, help the starving black kids, and then that's vaccines and HIV. They've caught the UN adding to it, and sterilants and all this garbage. All this garbage while they block industrialization. It is an incredible death sentence. And this article needs to be gotten out to everyone. To everyone. I'm going to be reporting on it more tonight on InfoWars Nightly News at 7 o'clock. We're also going to get in tonight on the show to all these women shaving their heads for cancer awareness and men doing it and all the jogs and runs and events, but never talking about why is cancer tripled in most types. I keep saying doubled the last 10 years. I'm sorry. I went and looked at the numbers again, and on most types it's tripled since 1980. Breast cancer, right at tripled. Other types, some have quadrupled. Some are up 7-fold, 10-fold. Lung cancer in women, 7-fold, even though smoking's way down. By the way, I see disinformation campaigns. I was on Russia Today a few days ago, and I saw a commenter, and it's always the same dummy channel, saying, Alex Jones is a liar. I checked his facts. Switzerland is not the wealthiest country per capita. And then I saw the same dummy accounts responding, going, yes, I checked it. He's a liar. I was debating, globalism and neutrality and how neutrality is always a good policy, as George Washington said, with the host. And I thought, well, I've known that for years, but let me check and make sure I'm wrong. I thought Luxembourg isn't really technically a country. It's a parking spot for the elite. But per capita, it's not as wealthy as Switzerland. And I said, I know Norway's close. Boom, pulled it up, World Fact Book. Switzerland, for more than 20 years running, the wealthiest per capita country, over 217,000 adjusted dollars, even more in Swiss francs a year. So I see this continued disinfo campaign, not by people that don't like me, but they admit they have these programs through Cass Sunstein, the White House, PR firms, but dummy accounts with no information, just saying everything I'm saying is a lie. And it's a hoax. It's a hoax. So just look for that and see that and know that web-wide, no one is attacked like yours truly. And I ought to be glad. At least they're just doing that, not killing me. Okay? They're trying to assassinate my character. And that's fine. Because I don't care about myself. There's no future if we don't beat these people. Okay? But when I tell you the UN's been caught worldwide hundreds of times adding sterilants to vaccines, I had Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. We're going to Aaron in a moment after Paul finishes. I had Dr. Sherry Tenpenny on yesterday. I'd interview her 10 years ago, and she wouldn't say it's on purpose. They're trying to kill us, world government. Now she's read all the documents, the Rockefeller documents. Now she sees 13 different manufacturers, Merck, making their vaccine, 13 labs making it, all of them on purpose, clearly had the adjuvant bound to the full virus, not an attenuated, and it's really meant to implant the virus inside the DNA of the body. And that's what all the medical scientists who've looked at it are saying. And I said to her, is this not staged? And she said, no, it's clearly staged. I mean, boom, right there. People are really facing the horror. Only facing it is going to defeat these people.